Today, I'm excited to share with you my experience of raising chickens right in my backyard. Currently, I have 3 hens, and just this week, I've collected a total of 20 eggs. Raising chickens has brought me a lot of joy, and I want to share with you what I've done. I'm not an expert in this field, but I can certainly share my real-life experiences. In this video, I will talk about how I chose my chicken breeds, built my coop, and selected the right bedding. Let's dive in and explore together. If you've been following my channel for a while, you might have already seen my previous video about the chicken coop. If so, feel free to skip that section. Next, I'll introduce my chickens' diet, how often I feed them, and the way I prepare a dust bath for them. Finally, we'll take a look at the eggs I've collected this week. In addition, I have spent a lot of time researching chicken raising and will be citing some important studies throughout the video. If you're interested, I'll leave the links below so you can check them out. Of course, everyone raises chickens in different conditions, so what I share may not apply entirely to your situation. I'll give you a quick overview of the land where I keep my chickens. If you have a dense, tree-filled garden, your environment will be quite different from mine, an open space with few trees for cover. The climate where I live is quite cold in the winter, with snow but rarely dropping below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, while summers can get quite hot, reaching up to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Additionally, my area has a lot of predators, including birds of prey like hawks, raccoons, and wildcats. So, I encourage you to consider these factors when deciding on the best way to raise chickens in your own environment. Sometimes, when I show you something I'm doing, it might not be applicable to where you live. One of the most common questions people ask when they're new to raising chickens is whether they need a rooster to get eggs. The answer is no, you do not need a rooster for hens to lay eggs. This leads me to another piece of advice. When I first started, I picked up several books to help me learn about raising chickens since I had no prior experience. We initially bought some baby chicks about 10 or 11 years ago, but I had to give them away when we moved, so I never got to collect my first egg. However, having reference materials has been incredibly helpful. I keep a health book on hand to diagnose any potential issues with my chickens, along with general guides that answer common questions. I highly recommend getting a book in addition to watching videos. Having a reliable source of information available at all times can be invaluable. Before you rush out to buy baby chicks, one crucial thing to check is whether you're actually allowed to keep chickens where you live. Many urban areas have regulations that prohibit or restrict backyard chickens, so you'll want to contact your local government or homeowners association if you live in a regulated neighborhood. If you're in the city, there might be specific rules, such as a ban on roosters due to their crowing early in the morning, minimum distance requirements from property lines, or a limit on the number of chickens you can keep. Checking these restrictions beforehand can save you a lot of trouble down the line. Before you invest in chickens and a coop, the first step is to ensure that keeping chickens is allowed in your area. Once you've confirmed that, the next important step is selecting the right breed before purchasing a coop. This way, you can get a coop that fits the specific needs of your chickens. There are many different chicken breeds available, but in this video, I'm focusing specifically on egg-laying hens rather than dual-purpose breeds. Some people raise chickens for meat, while others keep them solely for egg production. There are also dual-purpose breeds that are both good layers and meaty enough to be used for food. Understanding these differences can help you make the right choice for your needs. Chickens come in various sizes, which directly impacts the space they require. Smaller chickens, known as bantams, typically weigh between 2.5 to 3 pounds and lay smaller eggs. However, because of their size, you can keep more of them in a smaller coop. Medium-sized hens, like the ones I have, weigh around 4 to 5 pounds and lay a generous number of eggs. Meanwhile, larger hens can weigh anywhere from 7 to 8 pounds, which means they need significantly more space. When looking at coops, keep in mind that a label stating it can house 4 to 5 chickens may refer to smaller bantams rather than full-size chickens. If you're raising larger breeds, the same coop might only accommodate 2 hens comfortably. Choosing the right breed first will help ensure that your coop provides enough space for your chickens to live comfortably and lay eggs efficiently. I'll also include some links to useful charts that can help you compare different breeds and decide which one suits your needs best. To help you choose the right breed, I've linked a chart below the video that provides information on a wide range of popular chicken breeds. The chart ranks their egg-laying ability from poor to excellent, shows the color of their eggs, and indicates whether they are cold hardy, an essential factor if you live in a colder region. However, it does not include the weight of each breed. If you find a breed that matches your preferences in terms of egg production, egg color, and climate suitability, you can click on its name for additional details, including its weight. Considering all these factors will help you make the best decision. Once you've selected your breeds, perhaps even a mix of different types, you can start thinking about the ideal coop size and setup. Before I move on to showing you my coop, let me introduce you to my 3 hens. First, meet Dolly, a cream leg bar. She lays gorgeous blue eggs, though they're on the smaller side, but she's a fantastic layer, producing about 6 eggs a week. She also has a very sweet and friendly personality. Next, we have Sally, an Easter egger. She lays beautiful blue-green eggs and is an incredibly prolific layer. She's the dominant hen in the flock, always in charge. At one point, I thought I was mistaken because I collected 2 eggs from her in a single day. At first, I wasn't sure, but since I only have 3 hens, I was able to confirm that Sally really is an exceptional egg producer. Since I collect eggs twice a day, I can usually keep track of how many each hen lays. Today, while I was doing the voiceover for this video, I went outside to check the nesting box. I had already collected eggs earlier, but to my surprise, I found 2 more eggs in the same spot. What was even more surprising was that Sally had just walked out of the nesting box. Since the eggs were identical in color and size, I knew she had laid both of them. This is one of the benefits of having a small flock. You become very familiar with your hens and can recognize the eggs they lay. I've always read that it takes around 20 to 24 hours for a hen to produce an egg, but clearly, in some cases, they can lay 2 eggs very close together. It's fascinating to see how their bodies work and how egg production can vary. 7:35. Now, let me introduce my 3rd hen, Daisy. She's also an Easter egger, but her eggs have a slightly darker green shade compared to Sally's. Each of my hens lays a unique egg color, which makes collecting them even more fun. In just a moment, I'll go over the different egg colors, but for now, those are my 3 chickens. 809. Now, let's move on to my chicken tractor setup. This small coop comfortably fits all 3 of my hens, and the attached run, which is the enclosed outdoor space, is about 6 by 6 feet. The coop itself is only 2 feet by 2 feet, which may sound small, but chickens don't need a ton of space inside their coop. They mainly use it for sleeping and staying safe at night. More often than not, they prefer to huddle together while they sleep, so a compact space works just fine. At the back of my coop, I have my nesting boxes, where they lay their eggs. Having a setup like this keeps everything organized and ensures my hens have a secure place to rest and lay eggs. Now, let's take a closer look at their nesting area. We'll take a closer look at everything in just a moment, but first, let me walk you through the setup inside my chicken coop. I've designed it to be both practical and comfortable for my hens. To ensure good airflow, I installed windows that provide ventilation. In the winter, I can cover them with a small piece of plexiglass to keep my chickens warm and protected from drafts. For easy maintenance, I placed a rubber mat on the floor of the coop, making it simple to clean. Some people prefer to use linoleum as a flooring material, which also works well. Another essential feature of any coop is a roosting bar. Chickens prefer to sleep off the ground, so they jump up onto a perch, keeping their feet tucked under them for warmth. My 3 hens comfortably fit on the roosting bar I made for them. Some coops come with built-in roosts, and I plan to add a more permanent one to my setup in the future. Now, let's talk about access points. My run, the enclosed outdoor area, has a door that allows me to let my chickens in and out of the coop easily. On the side of the coop, there's another access door, which I primarily use for cleaning. Additionally, I included a small window in the back to improve ventilation. Proper airflow is crucial for chickens, as they can overheat easily. It also helps prevent the buildup of unpleasant odors, since, As you might expect, coops can get messy with all the droppings inside. At the back of the coop, you'll find the nesting boxes, which are secured with a safety latch to keep them closed tightly. Inside, I line the boxes with pieces of cardboard for extra insulation, and then I add soft, clean rags to create a cozy nesting area for the hens. This setup ensures that they have a comfortable and clean space to lay their eggs while keeping everything easy to manage for me. Now, let's take a closer look at the nesting area. One of the little tricks I use for maintaining clean nesting boxes is repurposing small cardboard boxes from the grocery store. I often shop at Aldi, where they have these convenient boxes left in the aisles. Whenever I go, I pick up a few because they fit perfectly inside my nesting boxes. These boxes have small cutouts in the front, making them easy for my hens to access while also keeping the nesting area neat. If any moisture from rain or an accidental leak gets in, I can simply toss out the soiled box and replace it with. In addition to keeping things clean, I also prioritize ventilation and natural light inside the coop. I have a window on the opposite side to ensure plenty of airflow. Fresh air is essential for my hens' health, especially in preventing moisture buildup, which can lead to respiratory issues. Another crucial feature of my coop is a secure locking system. Since my area has a lot of predators, I make sure the nesting box and coop doors close tightly and latch securely each night. Before heading inside for the evening, I always check to make sure everything is locked up. On particularly cold nights, I drape a light blanket or sheet over part of the coop to help insulate it against the chill. My concern about predators led me to install a small security camera with a motion detector near the coop. I was curious to see if anything was lurking around at night, so I set the camera to record 2-minute clips whenever it detected movement. One night, I checked the footage and caught a raccoon desperately trying to break into the coop. I have no idea how long it had been out there, but for at least 2 minutes, it was doing everything it could to get inside. This just goes to show how determined predators can be. Raccoons, foxes, and even neighborhood cats see chickens and eggs as an easy meal, which is why having a predator-proof coop is absolutely essential. I've heard of foxes digging under poorly designed coops to gain access, so when selecting a coop, it's important to choose one with solid protection. My area also has a high number of hawks and other predatory birds, which is one of the main reasons I keep my chickens inside the enclosed run. I don't allow them to free range in the yard because with such a small flock, losing even one hen would be a big deal. If I had a larger flock, say, 30 chickens, it might not be as much of a concern. But since I only have 3, I have to take extra precautions. Every morning, as soon as the sun comes up, I head outside to let them out of the coop. This is also when I provide them with fresh food and make sure they have enough water. If you live in a colder climate, one thing to watch out for is frozen water in the winter, which can be a challenge. I'll go over feeding and water maintenance in more detail in just a moment. When setting up my coop, I decided to go with a chicken tractor, which is simply a coop on wheels that allows me to move it around my yard. This setup is great because it prevents the chickens from overgrazing in one area, giving them fresh ground to scratch and forage every day. However, I made a mistake when choosing my coop's wheels. They're too small, making it difficult to move. If you're considering a chicken tractor, I highly recommend getting larger wheels to make moving it easier. Because my hens are full-sized, I move the coop daily to ensure they always have fresh ground. When they were younger and smaller, I only moved it every 3 days. Each time I relocate the tractor, I make sure to wear washable shoes because walking around the coop area can get messy, and I don't want to track anything into the house. Once I move the coop, the area where it was previously sitting looks quite bare. The chickens don't eat much of the grass itself, but they scratch at the ground constantly, digging into the soil to find bugs and other little treats. This natural behavior keeps them active and engaged while also aerating the soil. Watching them forage and scratch around is one of my favorite parts of keeping chickens. To help maintain the yard around my coop, I use a simple thatch rake. I think I picked it up from Amazon or Walmart. It does a great job of pulling up any loosened thatch, which helps keep the ground from looking too rough after moving the coop. After that, I go back over the area and reseed it. Right now, I'm planting tall fescue grass to make the yard look nice, but I'm also adding clover since my chickens love it. They don't seem too interested in eating the grass itself, but they enjoy foraging through the clover, so I'm focusing more on that for them. Once I've spread the seeds, I cover them with a light layer of hay to help protect the new growth. Over here, you can see a patch of grass that I recently reseeded. It's much greener than the surrounding area. That's the process I've been using to restore the ground after the chickens have scratched through it. For the seeds, I simply went to my local feed store and picked up a mix of clover and tall fescue. They bagged it for me in a simple paper bag, and it was really easy to find. One thing I want to emphasize, chickens poop a lot. Probably more than you'd expect. And with that comes one of the biggest challenges of keeping chickens, flies. A lot of people don't realize just how many flies a chicken coop can attract. If you're using a chicken tractor like I am, moving it regularly helps reduce this problem since the droppings don't accumulate in one spot. However, if you have a stationary coop, I strongly recommend placing it as far away from your house as possible, while still being convenient enough for daily checks. Also, be sure to follow any local regulations regarding coop placement. Some areas require coops to be at least 100 feet from property lines, so it's worth checking the rules in your area. Flies are much less of an issue in the winter, but when summer rolls around, they can become a real nuisance. Taking the right precautions now can help keep the fly population under control before the warmer months hit. As summer approaches, you'll notice a sharp increase in the fly population around your coop. This is something I learned early on when I first put my chickens in their run. It was August, and the sun was intense. I quickly realized that my hens weren't happy being in direct sunlight all day. To fix this, I bought a small tarp from Amazon that had grommets on the corners. These made it easy to attach to the run using simple clips I picked up at Harbor Freight. Since then, my chickens have been much happier, as they now have a shady spot to escape the heat. Shade is crucial during the summer, especially for full-grown hens, as they can overheat quickly. However, in the winter, the tarp serves a completely different purpose. Instead of just providing shade, it helps block snow and wind, keeping the coop warmer. Since chickens naturally huddle together on their roost at night, they generate body heat, which helps them stay warm. But to add extra insulation, I drape a sleeping bag over the coop. Because my coop is small, one sleeping bag is enough to block traps and keep the inside cozy. One of the biggest lessons I learned the hard way was about flooding. After a heavy rainstorm, our area experienced major flooding, our pond even overflowed. At the time, my chicken tractor was positioned too close to the low ground near the pond, and I was genuinely worried my chickens would get flooded out. Luckily, they were fine, but I now make sure to position the coop on higher ground whenever heavy rain is in the forecast. On nice days, I like to roll up the tarp and sleeping bag to let in some sunshine and fresh air. My chickens enjoy the fresh breeze, and I think they appreciate having the option of shade or sun. It's all about making small adjustments to keep them comfortable year-round. Now comes the exciting part, getting your chicks. By this stage, you should have already chosen your breed and set up your coop. Once you bring your chicks home, you'll be completely occupied with caring for them, so it's important to have everything ready beforehand. If you wait until after getting the chicks to buy or build a coop, you might find yourself overwhelmed. If you have your heart set on a specific breed, be aware that there may be a waiting period if you're ordering from an online hatchery. Some breeds are more popular and sell out quickly, so it's a good idea to check availability in advance. If you don't want to wait, local feed stores are a great option, especially during the spring. They often have a variety of chicks in stock. Another option is local breeders, who sometimes sell pullets, young hens that are around 7 to 8 weeks old. Choosing a pullet instead of a day-old chick can make things a lot easier. Raising chicks from day one requires extra care, supplies, and time. A one-day-old chick needs constant warmth, special food, and a controlled environment, while an 8-week-old pullet is fully feathered and ready to move into the coop right away. If you're looking for a low-maintenance start, getting pullets can save you weeks of extra work. However, if you decide to raise baby chicks, you'll need some essential supplies. First, you'll need chick grit and chick starter crumbles, which are specially formulated to help baby chicks grow strong and healthy. Another critical piece of equipment is a brooder, which provides warmth and protection for the chicks in their early weeks. In the next section, I'll show you the setup I use for brooding and the best way to keep your baby chicks happy and thriving. For my brooder setup, I decided to repurpose my dog's travel pen, the kind that collapses for easy storage. I originally got it on Amazon, and it's made of a vinyl or polyester material, which made cleanup simple. After using it for the chicks, I just rinsed it off and left it outside so the UV light from the sun could naturally disinfect it. Once it was clean and dry, it folded right back up for easy storage. Here's how I set everything up. I placed the travel pen in a secure area and, inside, I set up a large bucket with a stake running through it, which acted as a small roost for the chicks. I also added bedding at the bottom to keep the chicks comfortable. One of the most important things for baby chicks is warmth. They can't regulate their body temperature well in the first few weeks, so providing a reliable heat source is essential. I used a heat lamp positioned to one side of the brooder, allowing the chicks to move closer if they needed warmth or further away if they were too hot. Our dog was very curious about what was going on, so we let him check out the chicks from a safe distance. It was fun to watch his reaction. He was definitely interested but also a little unsure. If you've picked up a good chicken care book, it should have a section on raising baby chicks, which I highly recommend reading. For the bedding, I just placed a soft layer of material in the bucket and made sure the chicks had a small roosting bar to practice perching. Temperature control is key during these early weeks. When chicks are very young, they need to be kept at 95 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit. The best way to monitor this is by using a laser thermometer to check the temperature in different parts of the brooder. The temperature should gradually decrease by about 5 degrees Fahrenheit per week until they are fully feathered and able to handle normal outdoor temperatures. Providing the right warmth in these early stages is crucial for their growth and survival. To gradually lower the temperature for the chicks, you can simply raise the heat lamp by about 3 inches each week. This small adjustment naturally decreases the warmth in the brooder by approximately 5 degrees. Keep doing this weekly until the temperature inside the brooder matches the temperature of the surrounding room. This gradual cooling process helps the chicks adjust to normal temperatures as they grow. Here's a look at my brooder setup in the morning while the chicks were still sleeping. I provided a small dish of water, some chick crumbles, and a bit of chick grit mixed in. As expected, they loved sleeping right on the small stake I set up as a perch. At this stage, I had 3 Easter eggers in my flock, and later, I introduced cream leg bars. Eventually, I sold 2 of my chickens, keeping my flock at a manageable 3 hens. One issue I noticed early on was that whenever I changed their bedding, the chicks would immediately start scratching and biting themselves, almost as if they were irritated or itchy. At the time, I was using pine shavings for bedding. Seeing their reaction, I suspected that mites or other tiny pests might be hiding in the bedding material. To prevent this, I started adding diatomaceous earth, DA, to the bedding. DA is a natural substance made from crushed fossilized shells, and it effectively kills soft-bodied insects like mites without using chemicals. After mixing a little into the bedding, I noticed an immediate improvement. The chicks stopped itching, and their environment stayed cleaner. Since then, I've used diatomaceous earth for many aspects of chicken care, and it has proven to be incredibly useful. I'll refer to it as DA throughout the rest of this video. If you plan to raise chicks, I highly recommend keeping some DA on hand, as it can help prevent pests and keep the coop sanitary. By the time my chicks reached 7 to 8 weeks old, they were fully feathered and ready for the next step in their journey, moving out of the brooder and into their permanent coop. Once my chicks were 7 to 8 weeks old, it was finally time to move them into their coop. They quickly settled in and enjoyed their new space, especially their roosting bar. In fact, they seemed so comfortable that they didn't want to leave the coop at night. Since it was early fall, around September, the temperatures started dropping, so I set up a small heat lamp inside the coop just to provide a little extra warmth. Now that they were in their new home, it was time to introduce them to the outdoor environment. Chickens are naturally curious, but at first, they were hesitant to step out onto the grass. To encourage them, I used a little bit of food as a lure, and when that didn't work, I ended up picking them up and placing them outside myself. It was a fun moment watching them explore their surroundings for the first time. A couple of weeks later, I decided to add 2 cream leg bars to my flock. My original plan was to keep them all in the coop while they were small and later sell 2 of them to a neighbor. That's exactly what I did, and I ended up keeping just 3 hens for my flock, which was the perfect number for my setup. Inside the coop, I continued using pine shavings as bedding. Pine shavings work great because they help absorb moisture, control odor, and make cleaning much easier. To further maintain cleanliness, I continued treating the bedding with diatomaceous earth, DA, which is readily available on Amazon and at most feed stores. While some chicken keepers prefer sand, and others swear by straw, I found that straw tends to mat up and clump together, making it harder to clean in a small coop. With my setup, pine shavings have been the best choice. Plus, since one of my access doors is level with the ground, I can simply scrape out the old bedding without any hassle. Instead of throwing it away, I've been composting the used pine shavings, which is a great way to recycle waste while enriching the soil in my yard. Pine shavings take longer to break down compared to materials like wood chips, though I'm not entirely sure why. Because of this, I've decided to create a separate compost pile just for pine shavings. My plan is to keep this pile more moist than my regular compost, which should help speed up the decomposition process. Before we move on to discussing food and water, I'd like to take a moment to ask you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you do, make sure to click the bell icon next to the subscribe button so you can customize your notifications. I recommend selecting all so you won't miss any updates. This way, you'll get notified when I post behind-the-scenes updates on the community tab, share what I'm working on, and of course, upload new videos. I run a unique channel where I combine my love for gardening and cooking, showing you how everything ties together, from growing food to preparing it in the kitchen. If that sounds interesting to you, I'd love to have you as part of the community. Now, let's dive into food and water for chickens. Unlike humans, when a chicken eats, the food first goes into a small pouch called the crop. At this stage, the food hasn't been digested yet, it simply gets stored there. From the crop, the food then moves down to the gizzard, where the real breakdown process begins. As the food moves toward the gizzard, it gets coated with enzymes to help with digestion. However, the actual grinding of food happens inside the gizzard, which makes their digestive system quite different from ours. Humans chew food first, breaking it down before it reaches the stomach, but chickens rely on their gizzard to do the grinding for them. Scratching and pecking isn't just for fun, it's an essential part of a chicken's daily activity. If they don't get enough exercise, they risk becoming overweight, which can lead to a serious condition called egg binding. This happens when an egg gets stuck inside the head, and if not treated, it can be fatal. I haven't had this issue with my flock, but it's always a good idea to keep them active and engaged. To keep them busy, I scatter some scratch grains in the morning, so they have something to work on throughout the day. However, scratch grains are just a treat. The main part of their diet is something called layer feed, which provides all the essential nutrients they need to lay healthy eggs. Let's take a closer look at what's in layer feed and why it's so important for egg-laying hens. When shopping for layer feed, you'll find that it typically comes in 2 forms, pellets or crumbles. Initially, I bought pellets for my chickens when transitioning them to layer feed, as recommended on the packaging. However, they didn't seem to like the pellets very much. Since I still have some left, I'm working through that bag, but for the next round, I'll be switching to crumbles, which they seem to prefer. Along with their regular feed, I like to mix in a few extras that my chickens enjoy. This not only makes their diet more interesting but also provides them with added nutrition. So far, this method has been working well. Some of the extra treats I mix into their feed include peanuts, oats, raisins, sunflower seeds, and other small, nutritious ingredients. I increase their food intake in the winter, as they need extra energy to stay warm. In the summer, they don't require as much food since they naturally eat more bugs while foraging. Since my chickens weren't fond of pellets, I found a simple solution: grinding them up. If your chickens don't like pellets either, you can easily crush them in a bag or run them through a blender to create a finer texture. This makes the feed easier to eat and more appealing to them. To this mixture, I also add crushed peanuts for extra protein. Additionally, I like to mix in a small amount of grit to aid digestion. Oats are another favorite, Whether steel cut or rolled oats, my chickens love them. I also include wheat berries and a handful of raisins for variety. One special ingredient I always add is dried oregano from my garden. I crush it into a fine powder before mixing it in. Oregano has incredible health benefits for chickens, supporting their immune system and overall well-being. If you can, I highly recommend growing oregano yourself. It's super easy to cultivate and a fantastic natural supplement for your flock. I actually have an entire video on growing oregano, where I go into detail about why it's so beneficial for chickens. If you're interested, you can check that out for a full guide on how to grow it and incorporate it into their diet. Another thing I always mix into my chickens' feed is diatomaceous earth, duh. Of course, you can simply feed your chickens layer feed and allow them to graze naturally, and they'll do just fine. However, since I only have a small flock, I enjoy giving them extra treats and added care. Some might say I spoil them, but I love making sure they have everything they need. One of the biggest reasons I add to their feed is that it helps keep them worm-free. Chickens consume a lot of bugs, and these bugs often serve as intermediate hosts for worms. Essentially, worms live inside these insects before finding their way into a chicken's digestive system, where they can thrive. I read in one of my chicken care books that this supposedly doesn't make much of a difference. However, that book may have been written before more recent studies were conducted. A study from the University of British Columbia tested the effects of adding to hens' diets. They compared two groups of chickens, one that was fed and one that wasn't. The results showed that the chickens who consumed DA had a much lower fecal egg count, a measure of internal parasites, compared to those that didn't. Additionally, the DA-fed hens laid more eggs, and the eggs were noticeably larger. For anyone who wants to read the study, I'll leave a link down below. The research indicated that DA should make up about 2% of their total feed for optimal results. Because of this, I always mix a small amount of DA into my chickens' daily feed. It's a simple way to help prevent worms and support their overall health. One sign that your chicken might have worms is if their eggs appear unusually dirty when laid. Keeping eggs clean is important, and I'll go over egg care in just a bit. Occasionally, I also give my chickens dried mealworms as a treat. However, mealworms tend to be quite expensive, so I've mostly stopped buying them. Instead, I focus on feeding them nutritious foods that I can easily pick up at the grocery store. My usual feeding routine includes 1 cup of my special feed mix in the morning and another in the afternoon. Additionally, I provide 1 cup of scratch grains throughout the day to keep them active and engaged. One of my chickens' favorite treats is fresh greens from the garden. They absolutely love spinach, kale, and turnip greens. What's great about these leafy greens is that they're naturally high in lutein, which is beneficial for eye health. Interestingly, a study on lutein-rich eggs found that the lutein in eggs is more bioavailable, easier for the body to absorb, compared to lutein supplements. This means that eating fresh eggs from chickens that consume lutein-rich greens may be more effective for eye health than taking lutein in pill form. If you're curious, I'll leave a link to the study below for further reading. To ensure my chickens get fresh greens all year long, I also grow baby kale using a vertical garden system. This allows me to provide them with leafy greens even during the winter months. When feeding greens, I've found that chickens prefer pecking and tearing at the leaves themselves rather than eating pre-cut pieces. A simple trick I use is skewering a head of Napa cabbage onto a stick, securing it by the thick rib. This way, my chickens can peck at it just like they would in the wild. They seem to love Napa cabbage, and I suspect it's because of its naturally sweet taste. I always make sure to give them something fresh and green every day. If I have any extra vegetables, like older broccoli, I toss those in as well. They enjoy the variety, and it helps keep their diet balanced and nutritious. Sometimes, I end up with extra vegetables in the fridge that I didn't have time to cook, and rather than letting them go to waste, I give them to my chickens. One of their favorites is broccoli. They love pecking at the little sweet buds on the ends. It's fun to watch them go after it, and it's a great way to add variety to their diet. You may have heard of the term pecking order, and broccoli time is a perfect example of how it plays out. As soon as I toss in a piece, my 2 Easter eggers rush in and start eating, while my cream leg bar hesitates. She knows she's at the bottom of the pecking order, so she waits for her turn. Interestingly, I've noticed that the pecking order isn't static, it can shift over time. My black and brown hen used to be the dominant one, and she decided who got to eat first. For a long time, my cream leg bar was second in command, but recently, things have changed. She's now at the bottom, and my tan-colored hen has moved up to the second spot. If you observe chickens long enough, you can clearly see how this dynamic plays out. For example, my dominant hen will physically push the cream leg bar out of the way, sometimes even jumping on top of her in an assertive motion. This is how they establish who gets to eat first and maintain their social hierarchy. Aside from fresh greens and vegetables, I also give my chickens a high-protein snack every day, especially in the winter months when they aren't getting as many bugs. One of their absolute favorite treats? Thin slices of oven-roasted turkey. It's hilarious to watch them react when I bring out the turkey. They go crazy for it. They will chase each other and even fight over it, showing just how much they love this snack. It's an excellent protein boost, particularly during colder months when their natural insect intake is low. It's widely recommended that laying hens get a daily protein boost alongside their layer feed. Extra protein helps them maintain strong, healthy egg production, so it's an essential part of their diet. That's why I make sure to give my chickens a protein-rich snack every day, and as you can see, they absolutely love their oven-roasted turkey treats. They look forward to it so much that they practically race to grab their share whenever I bring it out. Now, let's talk about water, which is just as important as food. Chickens must have clean, fresh water available at all times. Their digestive system works differently from ours. Food first enters their crop, where it's stored before slowly moving down to their gizzard, where it's finally ground up and digested. If a chicken doesn't drink enough water, its crop can become clogged, which is a serious health risk. A blocked crop can prevent food from passing through properly, so keeping them well hydrated is crucial. I always make sure my chickens' water dishes are clean and refill them daily. Once a week, I deep clean the bowls to prevent bacteria buildup. For watering, I use simple cage bowls, which work well for my small flock. However, if you live in a colder climate, you might want to invest in a heated waterer to prevent freezing during winter months. At one point, I tested a different type of waterer, but ultimately, I found that the small cage bowls were the most effective for my setup. There are many different waterer styles available, but the most important thing is to keep the water clean and elevated off the ground. If the water dish sits directly on the ground, chickens might perch on it, and that leads to them pooping in their own drinking water, which is something you definitely want to avoid. Ideally, water containers should be raised or hung to keep them sanitary. I initially considered hanging my waterer, but I didn't want the extra hassle, so I stuck with my simple cage bowls, which are easy to manage and keep clean. For my small flock of 3, simple water cups work just fine. They're easy to clean, and my chickens prefer drinking from it. However, if you have a larger flock, you might want to consider using a bucket waterer with nipple attachments. These can be installed by drilling small holes into a bucket and attaching drip-style nipples, which allow chickens to drink without contaminating the water. I actually bought a set of these nipple waterers, but I've never gotten around to setting them up. Maybe I'll try them in the future, but for now, my hens seem happy with their basic water cups. I also picked up a small waterer from the pet store, but my chickens never quite figured out how to use it, so I stuck with what works best for them. Now, let me walk you through my daily chicken care routine. Every morning, as the sun rises around 7 a.m., I head outside to move the chicken tractor to a new location. This keeps their foraging area fresh and prevents buildup in one spot. Next, I fill their feed dish with 1 cup of my homemade feed mix. Since my mix contains special ingredients, I prefer to place it in a dish rather than scattering it on the ground, ensuring they get all the nutrients without wasting food. I also scatter 1 cup of scratch grains onto the ground to keep them busy and engaged throughout the day. After that, I check their water to make sure it's clean and fresh. Egg collection starts around 11 a.m. and continues until about 2 p.m., as my hens lay at different times. Sometimes, when I check the coop, I find 2 hens laying at the same time, each in their own nesting box. I try my best not to disturb them while they're laying. If my hens see me, They immediately assume I have treats and will get distracted from their nesting. So, I usually give them space during the morning hours. Of course, some days are slower than others. For example, this morning, when I checked the nesting boxes, I only found 2 eggs instead of 3. But that's just part of the natural cycle of raising backyard chickens. Around 11 a.m., I checked the nesting boxes, but later in the day, I went back and saw Sally, the little black hen, inside her nesting box, laying 2 more eggs. I must have startled her because she suddenly ran out, which is how I knew she was the one responsible for those extra eggs. By 4 p.m., it's time for their second feeding. I pick fresh greens from the garden or my vertical planter, called a green stalk, and toss them into the run for them to enjoy. I also take this time to check their water again to make sure they always have access to fresh, clean water. Around 6 p.m., I sometimes offer one last small feeding, but most of the time, they don't need it. However, this is when they get their 2 thin slices of turkey, which they absolutely love. It's their favorite snack, and they get so excited for it every evening. Depending on where their tractor is positioned, I might move it again in the evening to give them fresh ground to scratch at. By this time, they've usually dug up and scratched through the area they were in, so shifting them slightly gives them new ground to explore before bedtime. That pretty much sums up my daily chicken routine. Now, let's talk about dust baths, one of the funniest and most instinctive behaviors in chickens. Unlike other animals that bathe in water, chickens clean themselves by rolling around in dirt. It might seem strange to us, but to them, it's their version of a spa day. A common belief is that dust baths help reduce mites and parasites, which often hide under a chicken's wings. The fine dust gets into their feathers and helps eliminate any pests trying to latch onto them. But beyond hygiene, chickens just love dust bathing. It's clearly a natural and enjoyable activity for them. One time, I walked outside and saw 3 of my hens dust bathing together, rolling around and flapping their wings in the dirt. It was hilarious to watch, and they looked like they were having the best time. To create a dust bath for my chickens, I needed to find a tub that would fit through the small access door of my coop. Since my opening wasn't very large, I had to make sure the container I chose could slide in easily. If space weren't an issue, I probably would have opted for a larger tub, but this one does the job just fine. For the dust bath mixture, I keep things simple. I start with dirt from my yard, then I mix in diatomaceous earth, to help prevent mites. Additionally, I add some sand to create a soft, loose texture that makes it easier for the chickens to roll around in. I also keep a small bucket nearby so I can easily top off the dust bath whenever needed. Before adding the dirt to the tub, I sift through it to remove large rocks, roots, or debris. This ensures a smooth and comfortable bathing experience for my hens. Once the dirt, sand, and are thoroughly mixed, I pour it into the dust bath container. As soon as my chickens see me preparing their dust bath, they get so excited. They immediately try to jump out of the run and rush over to it. It's hilarious to watch because they instinctively know what it's for and can't wait to get in. One of my subscribers actually recommended using a kitty litter scoop to help sift through the dust bath every once in a while. This is especially useful because chickens sometimes poop in their dust bath, and keeping it clean ensures they can continue using it safely. Now, I use the scoop to remove debris and, to create a dust bath for my chickens, I needed to find a tub that would fit through the small access door of my coop. Since my opening wasn't very large, I had to make sure the container I chose could slide in easily. If space weren't an issue, I probably would have opted for a larger tub, but this one does the job just fine. For the dust bath mixture, I keep things simple. I start with dirt from my yard, then I mix in diatomaceous earth, to help prevent mites. Additionally, I add some sand to create a soft, loose texture that makes it easier for the chickens to roll around in. I also keep a small bucket nearby so I can easily top off the dust bath whenever needed. Before adding the dirt to the tub, I sift through it to remove large rocks, roots, or debris. This ensures a smooth and comfortable bathing experience for my hens. Once the dirt, sand, and are thoroughly mixed, I pour it into the dust bath container. As soon as my chickens see me preparing their dust bath, they get so excited. They immediately try to jump out of the run and rush over to it. It's hilarious to watch because they instinctively know what it's for and can't wait to get in. One of my subscribers actually recommended using a kitty litter scoop to help sift through the dust bath every once in a while. This is especially useful because chickens sometimes poop in their dust bath, and keeping it clean ensures they can continue using it safely. Now, I use the scoop to remove debris and refresh the dust bath regularly. I do need to replace my dust bath bucket soon, as my current one has started cracking. I've been patching it up with duct tape, but it's time for an upgrade. Here's a picture of my cream leg bar enjoying her dust bath. She absolutely loves rolling around in it, and the funniest part? She makes a sound that's somewhere between a cat purring and a cricket chirping while bathing. It's so amusing to listen to, and you can tell she's completely relaxed and enjoying herself. After spending time observing my chickens, I've realized just how important dust baths are for them. Not only for hygiene and parasite control but also as a natural way for them to relax and have fun. After 5 to 6 months of patiently caring for your chickens, you'll finally experience one of the most exciting moments, collecting your first egg. Let me tell you, it's a thrill. For me, that special day was January 25th, and based on the egg's color and size, it looked like it came from my cream leg bar. Since I collect eggs around noon, I've noticed that my hens use both nesting boxes. Some chicken keepers say their flock only prefers one nesting box, but mine have always used both. It's important that your eggs come out clean. If they're consistently dirty, it could indicate a worm problem in your flock. That's something to keep an eye on. To track egg size and production, I started weighing my eggs just to see how they compared over time. In the early weeks of laying, expect to get smaller eggs, but they should gradually increase in size as your hens mature. From my flock, my Easter eggers tend to lay larger eggs, while my cream leg bar lays slightly smaller ones. However, my cream leg bar is an egg-laying machine. She lays so many eggs, making up for the size difference with sheer productivity. The weight of an egg determines its official size category. On the right side of this chart, you can see the average egg weight, and on the left side, you'll find the total weight for a dozen eggs. This is how eggs are categorized, from peewee to jumbo. When my hens first started laying, I decided to record daily egg counts on a calendar. Here's a quick chart showing my egg collection over the past 8 weeks. This past week, I hit a new record, 20 eggs in just 1 week. That's largely thanks to Sally laying 2 eggs in one day, which was an unexpected bonus. I'm really impressed with their overall production, and now I have a much better understanding of how their egg-laying cycles work. At some point, egg production naturally slows down. One of the main reasons for this is a process called molting, where chickens shed old feathers and grow new ones. During this time, they typically stop laying eggs as their body focuses on regenerating feathers rather than egg production. Additionally, as chickens age, their laying frequency declines. Since my flock is still very young, I haven't observed this firsthand yet. However, I know that over time, their egg output will gradually decrease. To prepare for this, I've decided to expand my flock. I have another chicken tractor on order, which will allow me to raise a second small flock alongside my current hens. Later this year, I plan to get 3 or 4 more chicks, possibly by summer. Since chicks take 5 to 6 months to start laying, this means that by the end of the year, my new hens will begin laying eggs, just as my first flock's production might start to slow down. Of course, my current hens are still laying like crazy, so we'll see how things go. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for updates. I'll share my experience with raising my next flock and keep you posted on whether my first hens slow down in egg production over time. When I first started collecting eggs, I wasn't sure how to store them properly, so I did some research and found a great solution. I purchased a spiral egg rack from Amazon, which sits right on my counter. Here's how it works: freshly collected eggs go on top, and whenever I need one, I take an egg from the bottom. As I remove an egg, the rest roll down naturally, keeping them organized by age, so I always use the oldest eggs first. I've been using this method for a while, and I haven't had an egg break yet. As long as I gently place and remove them, it works perfectly. One more thing, I don't wash my eggs right away. Since all of my eggs get used within a week, I store them unwashed, preserving their natural protective coating. This helps keep them fresh for longer without refrigeration. Since I use all my eggs within a week, I don't have to worry about long-term storage. However, if you need to store eggs at room temperature, they can last up to 2 weeks on the counter without requiring any special treatment. When it's time to use an egg, that's when I wash it, not before. To properly clean an egg, I always use warm water, making sure it's at least 20 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the egg itself. This is extremely important because eggshells are porous. If there's bacteria on the shell and you wash the egg with cold water, it can actually pull the bacteria inside the egg. Warm water prevents this, ensuring that any surface contaminants stay on the outside and are rinsed away safely. And of course, eggs are one of the most versatile foods. They can be used in almost everything. One of the things I love most about fresh eggs from backyard chickens is the deep, rich color of the yolk. The difference is noticeable immediately. It's darker, creamier, and packed with nutrients. As for the eggshells, I don't just throw them away. After cracking an egg, I rinse the shells under hot water, using the same warm temperature from my sink, then set them aside to dry completely. Once I've collected enough shells, I store them in a plastic bag until I'm ready to use them. To repurpose the shells, I grind them down in a small blender, crushing them into smaller pieces before adding them to my compost pile. Eggshells are an excellent addition to compost, as they provide calcium and essential minerals that enrich the soil. However, it's important to grind them up first so they break down more easily. Here's a side-by-side comparison of a fresh backyard egg versus a store-bought egg. On the right is my fresh egg. Notice how the egg white is crystal clear and the yolk is a deep, rich color. On the left is a store-bought egg, which looks paler in comparison. The reason for this difference? My chickens eat a diet rich in fresh, leafy greens, which are naturally packed with lutein, a nutrient that enhances the color and quality of the yolk. The more greens they eat, the richer and more nutritious their eggs become. I hope this video has given you the confidence and knowledge to start raising your own backyard chickens. Whether you're just getting started or considering adding to your flock, I hope you found something useful in this guide. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, feel free to share it on your favorite social media platform. I'd really appreciate the support. While I'm not currently on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, I hope to join those platforms in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.